Good morning again. David A. Armstrong, J.D., the 10th president of St. Thomas University. I want to welcome back all our participants to part 2 of today's event series, Survivor Perspectives, Informing Our Work Against Human Trafficking. And I want to thank all those who participated in the previous prayer service. I personally believe in the power of prayer, and with the power of prayer and action, we can truly do something very important against human trafficking. I want to welcome our survivor leaders serving on today's distinguished panel, who will be introduced in a couple of minutes. Survivors of human trafficking are the heartbeat of the fight against trafficking in persons. And we are proud to have survivor leaders at St. Thomas University and its John J. Brunetti Human Trafficking Academy as our honored guests and distinguished panelists today. Please take the time to read the biographies of our survivors with their many accomplishments. We must acknowledge the importance of learning from the perspectives and lived experiences of survivors to inform our work alongside survivors and against human trafficking. Thank you again to the Coalition of Catholic Organizations Against Human Trafficking and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Migration and Refugee Services for contributing questions for panelists and for the amazing work towards ending human trafficking. God bless all of you here today. God bless you in your work. And as we say here at St. Thomas University, go Bobcats. And now Professor Rosa Patti will introduce our distinguished panelists.
Thank you very much, President Armstrong, for your unfailing support and for your personal dedication to the efforts against human trafficking. And also, I'd like to thank you for the focus that you have brought to St. Thomas University on ethical leadership. Judge Robert Long, who joins us today in this panel, honoring our invitation to be here today, wrote, "I hold St. Thomas University in high regard. The integrity of your university and its goal to educate and inspire ethical leaders is a most honorable aspiration. And ethical leadership demands us to firmly anchor our work in and to live by the core values of Catholic social teaching: life and dignity of the human person, call to family, community, and participation, rights and responsibilities, option for the poor and the vulnerable, the dignity of work and the right of workers, solidarity and care for God's creation, human and planet." When we look at human trafficking, we see a phenomenon, a crime that violates each and every of these core values. So we gather here today to renew our commitment before the Heavenly Father that we will work ever harder to end this scourge on humanity and to heal the wound of the contemporary society and of the body of Christ, as Pope Francis puts it. And to further enlighten our work today, we are blessed with the presence of an esteemed panel of survivor leaders. Our moderator today will be Miss Maria Florencia Cornu Raport. She is an assistant professor of academic success here at St. Thomas University College of Law. She's a member of the Catholic Identity Committee of our College of Law, and she's a proud graduate of our Master of Laws program in Intercultural Human Rights. Florencia has a big heart, always in service of dignity of each and every person and of the whole person. Florencia, the floor is yours. Take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Patti. It's my honor to be here today and be able to welcome our distinct panel. I was reading the biographies, and I encourage, as President Armstrong just said, to everyone to go and see the life stories of our distinct panel today. I'm going to briefly introduce you to the Honorable Robert Long. He is a district court judge for the 18th Judicial Circuit of Colorado, where he currently presides over a domestic relation docket. Judge Long provides presentations nationally and internationally on issues such as human trafficking, childhood trauma, and resiliency, and has been appointed by different administrations to serve as an advisor on different committees related to human trafficking. So welcome, Judge Long. We will welcome the Honorable Kwame Hadobi-Herrera. Mr. Hadobi-Herrera is an anti-trafficking advocate, a consultant, and a speaker, member of the United States Advisory Council on Human Trafficking in the state of Ohio, and is currently a member of Not for Sale, One Step at a Time, an organization that brings awareness and hope to communities across Ohio, America, and around the world. Welcome. And last but not least, we are going to welcome Ms. Rebecca Charleston. Ms. Charleston is the Strategic Initiatives Director of the Jensen Project, is a nationally respected leader and dynamic public speaker. She built a career dedicated to the empowerment of survivors and focus on community collaborations at all levels. Welcome, we welcome you all. Thank you for being here today. And we are going to start with the questions. Yes, we're going to start with the questions. So the first question is going to be for Ms. Charleston, and we are going to ask you to answer in 5 minutes. And the question is, how might organizations working to end human trafficking and support survivors become more survivor-informed? We give you the floor. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So nice to be here today. And I think events and opportunities just like this one, making space for survivors to have their voices be heard. But it's also more than just that, it's also giving them opportunities for meaningful empowerment, which means positions in leadership. That could be on an organization's staff. It could be as a board member. There's a lot of different ways to move from this idea of tokenism, where we recognize we need survivors' voices, into what we call meaningful inclusion, where we're actually, informing our own policies and, the way we run our programs, we're actually taking that feedback from survivors and putting it into practice. I think it's really important to also remember that, survivors don't have the same starting line as everyone else. Survivors really start from obviously a much bigger disadvantage than most people. And so in that, when we give them meaningful opportunity and meaningful inclusion, we also need to be personally developing them. We need to be walking alongside them. And hey, we know you didn't start at the same starting line as everyone else. So how can we equip you and empower you to successfully carry out, those leadership positions? Or how do we equip you to better serve your own community, essentially? So I think, lastly, I'll mention, I think the idea of being survivor informed also means being more trauma informed. It means understanding the long-term implications and effects that surviving something as heinous as human trafficking, what that does to you and how it changes with each season. Just because, a survivor gets to a certain point, doesn't mean that they're always going to stay in that point. The healing from trauma like this can oftentimes be cyclical, and sometimes it feels like you take a step forward only to take 10 steps back. And so it's really important that we understand the long-term effects of trauma, and that we are, continuing to help build up each survivor that comes out to the best of our ability. A really great example of this would be my own story. The organization I went to for hope and healing, called Valiant Hearts, in the DFW area in Texas, I became the executive director of that very organization, which, man, talk about empowering. But they also understood they needed to help support me and, help lead me to be the best executive director I could be. So I just implore you guys to, not only that we hear the stories, but how are we then setting them up for success for the rest of their lives? How are we, meaningfully including them in organizations and events like this?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are gonna move now to a question that is related to this. So, what can faith community do better to support survivors in their current and future lives? And we are gonna ask first Mr. Adobe Herrera, and then we are gonna pass the floor to Judge Long.
Thank you so much again for the invitation. I am very blessed, and I wanted to say God is good, and thank you so much for putting this event together. Wow, this is one of the first events I have been a part of that is faith-based, that is surrounded by faith communities like this. So I'm just very overjoyed and blessed to be part of this event today and to spread the good news and to also be part of awareness group like this. So thank you again for inviting me. To your question, one of the things I think that community like faith community should do for us as a trafficker, as a victims of human trafficking or slavery is that equip us, okay, help us, equip us with the necessary tools that we need to survive when we are there. In my own story right now, in my own personal life, it is very challenging. After I was being rescued from my trafficker, I was put into juvenile delinquency home. Okay, to remind you, I'm not a troubled kid. I'm just a young boy that is in the middle school that just want to go to school and have a good life. But I was put in a place that was not prepared for me. I was placed in a home or a situation that was far from what I was expecting. It put me in such a bad space at that point. So we need to have organizations that have a home for young kids, young adults, whatever it is, a home for them or just a tool for them to survive. Once we identify and put into proper location, we need a government, we need our faith community to help us, equip us, pray with us, consult with us, be our teacher, guide us so we can be back into society. The healing takes a long time. Healing is a process that is always going, it's a continuous, and sometimes like Ms. Rebecca said earlier, it's cyclical. You can take a one step forward and 10 steps backward. It is really hard. And that's how I feel half the time. So in order to equip us, we need faith community to be there for us, supporting us, praying for us, helping us to just giving us the tools that we need so that we can move forward when we need that help. So that's what I have for that question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Judge Long, your floor.
Good morning. Thank you. I love this question because it is, what is it that the faith-based community can do? And the answer is obvious, I think. First is pray. And the power of prayer is phenomenal. But I would encourage you to pray for wisdom on how you yourself can help, but also for humility, because if you approach the victims as if they are needing your pity, you're going to miss the point. They don't need your pity. They need your empathy. They need your help. They need a hand up, but they don't want to walk, burdened or dependent on you. They want their own independence. They're being caught up by traffickers who are manipulating them and misusing them and stealing away their independence. And what you need to do is give them a hand up. And I also borrow from Michael W. Smith on the prayer of, open the eyes of my heart. You need compassion. And so that's what I would encourage you to first do is pray for wisdom, humility, compassion, so that you can see that the victims that you're trying to help become survivors are your equals. There's a verse, Matthew 25:40, that says, "For I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters, you did for me." It's a great verse because it starts with the least of these brothers and sisters, as if they are the least, as if you could look at a victim as the least of community, when in fact that verse says you're helping God, you're helping the King. So you shouldn't be looking at victims as if they need your pity and they need, that they are just pitiful little, the least of brothers and sisters. You need to look at them as if you're helping the Lord, because that's truly what you can be doing if you're engaging with human trafficking victims as they try to become survivors. The other thing I'd encourage you to do is when you're trying to help the survivors, is to think of how the traffickers were misusing them, and that's by that the trafficker creates chaos, creates betrayal, manipulates them, and sort of steals, as I said, steals away their independence. And so what I encourage you to do is think of ways that you can counter the actions of the trafficker. And what I learned on the bench when I was actually having cases before me with trafficked youth was that cookie cutter doesn't work. You cannot approach this with the one size fits all, and how I treat the homeless is how I'm going to treat the trafficking survivor, or how I help somebody in a delinquency case. I'm just going to do the same thing with them that I did with everyone else. It's not going to work with a trafficking victim or trafficking survivor. You need to think of a different way. You need to create trust. You need to help give them opportunities of self-determination. If you have a list of things that you offer folks, let them choose. Let them be a part of the team that helps them figure out what it is they need to recover. Because telling them, okay, well, I understand that you may not be addicted to drugs, but we're going to have you take this drug addiction class. That's not helpful. That may not be their circumstance. Figure out what they individually need and help the individual in front of you. And bear in mind at all times that they are your equal. They are your sons, their daughters, your brothers, your sisters. They are not the least. They are your equals. If you would conceive that there's a 6-year-old boy who was trafficked, and you look at that little boy as somebody who's pathetic and pitiful and just is dependent on you, you would overlook me, because that was my experience being trafficked at 6 years old. And I'm not pathetic. I'm a child of God. I need to be treated that way at all times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge. And we're going to continue talking, and we're going to make the next question to Ms. Charleston. And it is also following up with how should advocates meaningfully engage and work alongside survivor of human trafficking?
Wow. First, I just have to take a moment and pause. I am usually not on panels with such esteemed colleagues, and I'm just honored to meet you guys. I know we haven't met each other prior, but man, thank you for your courage and your vulnerability. I know exactly what it takes. And I just wanted to add from earlier too, like, the world doesn't have restoration and redemption. Only hope in God does, right? Only God can do that for us. And it's so important for the faith community to be involved. That's the only way I was able to come out of that fire, not smelling like smoke, is because of God and because of people that stood, and they decided to be the hands and feet, and they decided to look at me with compassion, as the judge mentioned, and not as someone that should have pity, but as someone that had something inside them that the world was trying to kill, and that they wanted to help me bring it out. The importance of ally relationships to survivors cannot be understated. When survivors and when victims get pulled out of human trafficking situations, it creates a vacuum. And as close friend Sergeant Byron Fassett always says, nature deplores a vacuum. And so if we don't immediately fill that vacuum with trust-based relationships, most often a victim or survivor will return to their circumstances, because as human beings, we are designed for connection. Doesn't matter what color your skin is, what age you are, what gender, anything. We are designed to connect with other human beings. And so when we pull people out of unsafe situations and put them into safety, but if we don't fill that void with trust-based relationships, like the TBRI model, I encourage you to educate yourself, trust-based relational intervention. If we don't feel that, then they're going to go back to unhealthy connections, because at the end of the day, it was still a connection. I know for me, I knew how to survive a day in the life of prostitution or exploitation. It was navigating the unknown that was terrifying. It was starting over, not from scratch, from less than scratch. I left my trafficker after I escaped while he was in prison after being arrested 10 times. I had a federal felony in my name. I've served 13 months in prison. He put $1 million of debt in my name. I owe the IRS $250,000. I mean, what was I going to do? I had no education, no job experience. What was I going to do? And so it was easier for me to stay in that life, because I thought I dared not even imagine a day of my future that didn't revolve around my body being sold. And so it took years, to finally get help, finally see my own victimization and stop blaming myself for what I went through. But it was through ally relationships. What we call our allies is, the advocates, the people that are working in this field, just like many of you. So it's, going back to that idea of, how are you personally developing the survivors? And I loved, Judge, how you mentioned it's individualized, and it has to be. We can't have these cookie cutter programs, these, okay, you get out and you get your GED, and then we'll, get you career readiness. And, not every survivor needs a GED. And matter of fact, many of them can't get one. And so how do we look at that person as a unique individual and identify, assess what needs they have, and then help build around that? How do we find those services? How do either we offer them, or we connect with other people in the community that are offering that service? And we make sure that the survivor feels supported and empowered the entire time. But I think something else, Jen, is really important that I want to note is the huge importance of how we portray victims and also stories of human trafficking. We need to portray them with accuracy and dignity. We cannot continue to see only white victims as the victims of human trafficking. If we're not displaying what the vast majority of LGBTQ and plus individuals, as well as, people of color that are disproportionately represented as victims of human trafficking. And so it's very important that we represent what trafficking actually looks like in our community, that we don't have the little puppet strings, of someone being played like a puppet, and we don't have images represented of people being held in dog crates or chains, because that is not what human trafficking typically looks like. Sometimes it can look like that, we understand, but that's usually the rare exception. It's not the norm. And so it's very important that we portray with accuracy what victims look like, so that way the public can actually understand, so they can have compassion on all those people and not just identify with one certain subset of the group. So I think that's very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Adobe Herrera, we wanted to ask you, what is the United States Advisory Council on Human Trafficking, and how does it work against trafficking in persons?
Thank you. To previously just answer one of the previous question about the faith community, my faith community I was involved with really helped me a lot. I became Catholic when I was in high school, and while I was in high school, I found a great parents. They were a great family. They didn't have any kids, and they adopted me into their family, and they culture me. They instill in me the love of God, so I can go out there knowing that I am loved by the Father, the Creator of all. And so just to share with you a little bit of how much the faith community can do for us, is just the prayer and just being there for us is so crucial. And if I didn't have those two parents, if they didn't decide to adopt me, I don't know where I would be right now. My life, I could be I could be in a jail right now. Or for God's sake, I could probably be dead right now because I don't know. But God knows, God has planned, and He lead me to them. And I'm so thankful for to this day. I am very blessed to have that faith community still be my parents and my high school, just those who have been there for me. It's amazing to know the faith. Our faith community is very, very crucial to ending this heinous crime to human trafficking. Now to the question of the U.S. Advisory Council on Human Trafficking is comprised of survivor leaders who are bringing their expertise and experience to advise and provide recommendations to presidents, interagency task force to monitor and combat human trafficking. So what that means is that as a survivor, there are 11 of us, we are reviewing the federal government policies and programs intend to combat human trafficking, including programs related to provision of service for victims. And then we gather information from the US government, agencies, states, and the community to council annual report. So we have an annual report that we'll be putting out every year. And then we also will be serve as a point contact to the federal agencies, reaching out to human traffic survivors for inputs on anti-human traffic programs and the policies in the US. So in all, what this basically means is that we are serving bringing awareness to the federal government by recommending to them that we see a problem, we want to help. And this is how we're gonna do it, by recommending to you how to change this policy. For example, the asylum process that I was involved with, that asylum process is very, very weak. And there's a loophole in that asylum process. And my trafficker was able to find that loophole, and he brought me here, changing my name, giving me a whole new identity. Basically, I was lost. He got rid of all my previous identity, gave me a whole new identity, which I was not ready for. And the government didn't see that. It was a flyby, and the government wasn't able to catch that. And so stuff like this are the reason why this council is existing right now. It starts in 2015. I'm just blessed to be part of it this year. For the next 2 years, I will be serving on this council so I can bring my expertise to help recommend policies and how to change and view and review things that are in place right now so we can make it better for the greater good, for the humankind, so that we as victims don't feel re-victimized every time we're out there trying to live life, trying to have the life that we deserve to have in the beginning. So thank you.
Thank you very much. But now we're going to move to the question on how might we best empower survivor leaderships in our global community, and we will like to ask Judge Lang his intake on this.
I think that there's 3 ways that they come to mind, and I'll be brief. I think the first is to, and this goes back to something Ms. Rebecca said earlier, and something I said earlier as well, figure out who's in front of you and what they need. And we were talking about trying to empower survivors. And the question is empower survivor leadership, but you have to figure out where is the survivor that's in front of you, and what do they need, and what are their skill sets, and where are they in their recovery process? Because a person who just left the trafficking incident is probably not going to be the person who is giving presentations and leading an organization or taking a leadership role as much as somebody who's going to be learning through it. So figure out first and foremost what their needs are. If they have, or if you can help them establish housing and food, that's it. You're meeting some of their basic needs. The next one is identifying what, if any, employment skills they need. So if they have an ability to make a living on their own, great. See if you can enhance that to give them some employment skills. If they don't have that, start giving some employment skills, in whether that's in office or industry. It's whatever skills they have or whatever you can build on or whatever you can teach them, because what you're trying to do is make it so that that survivor is independent and can survive on their own, and then build from that. If you have somebody who has been advanced, they're a few years past their trafficking experience, then really you need to be looking at them as survivors and as experts in the field, and treat them that way. First and foremost, recognize them as experts, the same as you might hire an expert, a lawyer or a doctor or an electrician. You recognize those people as having specialized skills, and that you would be compensating them and recognizing them for their expertise. The same for a survivor leader. And then the last I think of is, and the example I can think of is the Stephen Ministry. If you can empower a survivor to join your leadership in your anti-trafficking work, that's going to help you immensely. You're going to become a trauma-informed, survivor-informed organization. If they can join, as the remarkable story of Miss Rebecca, going from a client to the executive director. I mean, that's God's work, and that's amazing. Obviously, it comes not just from God's work, but Rebecca's own strength. That's exactly what you're looking for. You want to empower the survivor to become a mentor to other survivors, and to become an expert in your organization, whether that's your church, whether that's with you individually, but you're looking in some way to incorporate them. It's John 15:12, love one another as I have loved you. That's what you're doing. You're trying to find the ways that you can provide for that survivor, enable them, make them your equal, empower them to either gain their own independence if they're early on in their recovery, or recognize them as an expert, or recognize them and have them become a leader like Ms. Rebecca. Any of those steps, and they're all great steps, whether they're at their very first stage or whether they're at 10 years down the road and have become their own leader. You assisting them, you empowering them to become the greatest that they can be is the beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for all your enlightenment. Now we're gonna finish with a question that I will ask you, every one of you, to answer very briefly. We have a couple of minutes to answer this question. It's on the International Day of Prayer and Awareness against Human Trafficking. So what would be the message do you feel is most important for people to remember through the year? And we'll start, Mr. Adoboye Herrera. Please, if you can give us a couple of minutes of your comments.
Amen. George Long, thank you for that wonderful insight. I really appreciate what you just said. That's something I've been preaching for a very long time. And it's just, I don't know if my words get across at all, but I'm glad to hear that from somebody again. I myself, I've been struggling to find that all those three things you mentioned are something that I've been struggling with. Where do I start? How do I get there? Who's going to help me get there? It's hard. It really is hard to navigate through this world without the proper support. So thank you for bringing that into light to this beautiful event today, so we can hear it, so then we can then put into places what we need to do and how we need to do that. Just to answer your question, I have a beautiful quote from a beautiful saint today, Josephine Bakuta. She has a beautiful quote I was reading earlier, and I think that's what we need for this year and moving forward. So the quote reads like this: "Be good, love the Lord, pray for those who do not know him. What a great grace it is to know God." Josephine Bakuta. And that's all I have. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Charleston, please, your message.
I think it's very important to remember, so much time the focus is on the victims, and that's a good thing. But this human rights abuse doesn't happen without pimps, traffickers, and buyers of sexual exploitation. And so we need to remember that and pray for that, because if we rescue all the victims tomorrow, we're still going to have a problem of human trafficking, because there's still people out there that want to exploit other people's vulnerabilities, and there's still people that want to profit, and there's still people that want to buy the services and goods from those exploited people. And so we need to be praying for those people too. We need this isn't a gendered issue. This isn't a women's issue. This is also a men's issue, and we need men to be part of the solution. We can't just look at American men, who are typically the most prolific buyer of sex trafficking victims or prostitution in general. In terms of sex trafficking, we can't just look at the men and say you're the problem. We need to empower them to be part of the solution. Otherwise, this problem will never end. And I think for justice to be served as well, that we're praying for God to change their hearts, and also for God to bring about justice. God is a God of righteousness and of justice. And I would lastly say for laws to be changed to bring an end to human trafficking. I recently received a presidential pardon for my crimes that I committed that I was forced to commit while being trafficked. And I shouldn't have had to do that. I shouldn't have been convicted in the first place. I should have been seen as a victim. And, a presidential pardon is only partial relief. It was a huge step forward, but I'm still fighting for the full relief that would be provided by federal vacatur laws. So there's still laws definitely in every state in America, as well as federally, and I know in other countries, that need to be changed. So please keep that in your thoughts and prayers.
Thank you very much. And Judge Lang.
Thank you. I considered this question. We were thankfully provided these questions ahead of time, and so I thought, like, what's the best thing I can tell you? And I think of this to tell this to the audience. I'll tell you this: you've got this. That's what I would tell the audience. You've got this. And I'd say look back at your 2020 and see what you yourselves survived. COVID, economic loss, probably personal losses as well. So in a sense, you've already survived something yourselves. And so I would give you a sense of hope that you've got this. You can do better, that 2021 can be a year that's going to be better than the last, that you're going to make a difference. You are empowered by the most powerful of all, in God, and heaven and earth. And so what I'd encourage you to do is look inside yourselves to see what it is your special gift. Every single person in this audience has a gift given to them by God, and it's a special gift. And it's that verse, Mark 4:21, about not hiding your light. You don't put it underneath the bed. You put it on the stand. And so figure out what your special gift is. Don't hide that gift. Utilize that gift that God gave you to make a difference in the lives of survivors. You've got this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Judge. Thank you all our panelists. Thank you, our wonderful attendees. And please reminding you that we have a live mass for prayer and awareness against human trafficking happening 12:15, and you can follow it by YouTube. And without further ado, please, Dr. Patty, I give you the floor for the final remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Florencia. You did an amazing job moderating the panel. And I want to thank, on behalf of the Brunetti Human Trafficking Academy, our panelists. We know that we were up for an enlightening session, but I must say that we are absolutely humbled by listening to you. And we are in awe of your wisdom and your guidance and the education that you have given us as we try our best to work together to end this global phenomenon, this crime against humanity, but also a social phenomenon. As Rebecca was mentioning, it's everywhere. It means the whole society. A problem of this magnitude does need everyone. The solution is not monopoly of one profession, of one dimension of a society, but it's all working together. I also wanted to let you know that when the John J. Brunetti Sr. Gave us a gift to continue the work of the Human Trafficking Academy and the anti-trafficking work that we have done for a long time here, he wanted us that we work for survivor empowerment. And I sincerely believe that in you, we have found those great partners. We hope that you will come back to us. And we are very much graced with your presence, and we give you our love and appreciation. We try to hear your voice as we also try to hear and listen carefully to the transforming voice of our Lord. That's the only one that turns the ordinary into the extraordinary. And the panel today tells us that. So thank you to our attendees who are fighters for the dignity of each and every person, and to our esteemed panel. God's blessings to you all. Thank you.